Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to a belated Thursday/Friday edition of Tuesday Takes. Not changing the name, we may just at some point we may just have to switch to just Takes with Tre'Shon, which is also fine. It's not quite as much alliteration, but it still works. But Tre'Shon has repaired. The docking station is the culprit. We found that out. By we, I mean Tre'Shon did everything. I just sat and watched from afar. But Tre'Shon's back. Everything's working. How are you doing?
I'm doing so much better. My setup works. We just in time too, because with the combine here, you really don't want to miss anything. And we're sorry about missing Tuesday again. That is on me. But we are still here with the T cubed. So we're ready to go.
Yeah. It's a good setup. We are excited. It's a fun event. I'm hoping to get down there one of these years. I think it's a cool event. Obviously, we heard from Fontenot and Morris. We talked about that quite a bit on Falcoholic Live on Wednesday. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. Also, get into the prospects we want to watch this weekend, the prospects we have questions about. We're going to get to all that stuff and more over the next little bit here. Excited to dive in to the... If Senior Bowl is like the unofficial start of draft season, the Combine's like the official start of draft season where like everyone who's even paying attention a little bit is going to get in. So excited to really kick this thing off here on the Dirty Birds of Brews podcast. All right, before I forget, let me get to our sponsors. First of all, BetOnline, folks. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline's your ultimate game day and combine companion. So I don't know exactly what they've got going for the combine, but I would check it out and because everybody's into combine props these days. But even when the NFL is over, and these are the last vestiges of NFL betting, I'm sure at this point with the combine. Maybe there's some draft props, but NBA is going strong. March Madness next month. They've got NHL, UFC, all that stuff. In the meantime, BetOnline's your number one sports betting source. And from every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline's got you covered. They've got odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. So what are you guys waiting for? Head on over to that website. It's betonline.ag. Use our promo code BELIEVE to get access to the latest promotions. That's BLEAV. BetOnline, the game starts here. And of course, got a shout out. I wonder if this will be our last underdog shout out. Yeah, I guess the month ends, and obviously the NFL season's over. But underdog is just getting started. And speaking of combine picks, underdog has unleashed a full slate of combine combine higher lower numbers. Like, I mean, you gotta. So if you're into 40 times. I don't know if they're gonna do like weigh-ins or if they're gonna do like jumps, but I know the 40 times are up on underdog.
The 40 timelines.
Yeah, so you can do higher, lower, because it's underdog. You can adjust it and get those different prize numbers as well. It's a lot of fun. This is definitely one of the more degen activities of draft season, but I love it. It's a lot of fun. So go check out Underdog Fantasy. When you sign up, make sure to use our promo code BIRDS. That's BIRDS. To get access to the latest promotions, which I believe right now is up to a $1,000 bonus cash offer and a free pick when you first sign up. So go check out Underdog. And once the combine and other things are over, they've got NBA, they've got NHL, they got everything else that you need on there as well. So go take that. Go take a look over at Underdog Fantasy and just use our promo code when you sign up. All right. So, do you want to start with anything you want to cover from the press conferences that stood out to you before we dive into the prospects? I feel like the prospects is going to be like a black hole that we're just going to get lost in forever. So,
I honestly don't really think anything stuck out to me a ton with the press conferences. I don't, it kind of just feels like same boilerplate stuff, from Terry when discussing, he's never one to give away too much, although we know that apparently there's no offensive scouts at in the facility, which is an interesting statement. But is there anything press conference wise they stuck out to you this week?
Yeah, I mean, kind of how hard they went to push the line that Kirk was basically hiding his week 10 injury, which isn't it's not necessarily surprising in that, like, if they don't take this line, then they're probably opening themselves up for, fines and things like that. Like, they really have to set this line one way or another. But, it seems like they don't really care about calling out Kirk Cousins there, which I kind of like. I mean, because it's easy to see why, like, to be clear, I don't think anyone is completely innocent here, because I can't believe you watch Kirk Cousins for 4 weeks where he couldn't throw a touchdown and many other things and didn't realize something was wrong. But I also fully believe that Kirk Cousins probably downplayed the injury as much as he possibly could. Like, no, I'm good, guys. And like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, couldn't they like see? Like, isn't there something they could see? I mean, not necessarily. Like, I mean, I'm not sure they were taking him in for MRIs or anything. If he said he was good and he's practicing fully, like, I mean, it's not unreasonable. It's not like it's a broken bone where it's like, well, it's sticking out of your arm, Kirk. We can see that something. It's not like that. It's much more subtle.
Yeah.
And some of these like tears and strains and things like that, if it was mild, which it probably was if he was playing through it, you might not even be able to detect it. It's more of like a symptom reporting thing. So, if he really was working hard to obscure it, the training staff might have not been able to say like with any kind of certainty if he was hurt or not. Now, obviously, the on the field, you could kind of tell something was wrong. I mean, I know we talked about it during the season. It kind of felt to me like it was more like mental than physical. But again, like the pain management a lot of times is that. Like, it just affects your ability to do things cleanly or the way you want. I mean, it makes you hesitate, all that stuff. So it's, I don't think the Falcons could have possibly known nothing was wrong, but other than that, it's hard to say. But at least we know the official line is that Kirk basically hit his injury, which again makes sense from his angle as well, because I think we all know Kirk probably knew better than anyone, practicing next to Michael Penix every day, that like, oh my God, if I leave this field, like I'm not coming back. Like I'm not coming back. So, from like a human perspective, I mean, you kind of don't blame him. And I'm guessing he probably didn't realize the injury was going to impact him as much as it did. And it's a slippery slope. Once you start hiding it, can you really just be like, well, actually I'm hurt now? I mean, it is it tough situation. I think there's a clear argument that he hurt the team's playoff chances by doing that, and I know there's going to be a lot of fans that are really pissed off at him, and I think a certain level of that is probably warranted. But also, it's like the human angle of it. It's like, wouldn't you be tempted to do the same thing if you were in his shoes? I mean, this might be his last starting opportunity in the NFL. I mean, it's like I understand it, even if I think it was not great. It was not good for the team. I understand it. Not that I
not that you would ever do that.
Yeah, not that I would ever do such a thing. That would be crazy. But yeah, it is what it is. It's just, it's unfortunate how it played out.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it with like, I think I think we've all been a little disingenuous in saying that like, oh, the Kirk looks hurt conversations started during that slump, because those conversations were there from week 1. Like, people were saying that after the Steelers game, and then people were saying that all up until the final drive of the Eagles game, and then it was like, oh, we're good, and then the Seahawks game happened, and then so like, let's take a step back and kind of be like, everybody was already accusing that Kirk was not healthy in some form or fashion, whether it was his foot. So people like to say like, oh, well, we could all tell something was off, and it's like, well, people were saying that from week 1. You're really just trying to validate your own belief that you had at the beginning. And I agree, like we talked about this when it first broke. If it's just a soft tissue injury, that medical tests, like medical science has not advanced far enough yet for like us to be able to accurately read and see everything, like especially when it comes to injuries of that type. Take Troy Anderson, for example. They classified him with a grade 1 MCL sprain. That's the lowest grade possible. That is a 2-week recovery time max. What ended up actually happening? He had a grade 3. It was bad. It ended up keeping him out for a long time. They tried to bring him back early. It didn't work. So guys manage injuries, pain differently. Guys are able to hide it. Some injuries are easier to hide than others. And playing hurt is a part of football. So like this idea that Kirk did something that's like unique in that, oh, well, he just kept playing hurt. It's like, well, everybody did that. Michael Williams, who all of us, like a lot of us are a big fan of, he's on a tour right now telling everybody how hurt he was during his last season. And he's talking about like, yeah, it messed up my production. It did this, did that, but that's football. You play hurt, you go through these things. So I don't really think there's anything super egregious, like on the team's point of view for being like, okay, like, yeah, he said he was hurt. We're not really seeing anything in the test. And like, I also think the timeline just kind of unfortunately worked in Kirk's favor. When you look at that Broncos game, like that game became a wash because 9 players on defense were hurt. Darnell Mooney left in the first half. I think London's hit pointer bothered him again in that game at some point too, or something like that. But or no, it was Charlie Warner was out from that game. So like when you go back and look at that game, it's not really like, oh, we lost because of Kirk's arm. It's like, no, like we didn't have anybody healthy that game. So Kirk gamed it well,
Yeah.
And like you said, there's a human aspect to this point. You're not just going to like give up your seat when the team just drafted a guy at 8 to eventually take that seat from you. And like, we can be upset about that because like, hey, it's a business. You're supposed to do what's best for the team. But like at the end of the day, like you're saying, Kirk's looking at this like, this is probably my last contract, probably my last, like, I get to be the starter no matter what opportunity. So I'm going to ride that out as long as I can. And then after the Raiders game, they were just like, yeah, dude, this is
we can't like
we love watching Bradley Pinion pin people inside the 5, 4 out of 6 punts. We love it. But like this game isn't just for Trey. We got to make everybody happy and put a real quarterback out there. So it is what it is. But I'm with you. I'm glad that they at least, stood up for themselves a bit there and was like, no, he told us he was fine, so we believed him. He's an adult. We treat our players like adults here. If they tell us something, we believe them. If they lie, then that's not our fault.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough situation for them to be in, to be like, oh, he says he's fine, and we're just gonna be like, no, you're not fine. We don't believe you. It's just a tough situation for the team to be in. So, I feel like the team had to navigate a situation that was not great. I do think ultimately the best case thing happened in that we saw Penix long enough to make it clear that he was going to start. Like I'm thankful that they didn't, stick with Kirk any longer. I really think they should have given Penix at least the Raiders game also, but whatever, can't go back and change that now. But yeah, at this stage, it's like, thank God Penix got the games he did to show enough to be the unquestioned starter. Because I think it could have been way worse that we go into 2025 not knowing if we can trust Penix or if we have to stick with Kirk or whatever. Like, at least now we have that certainty of like, oh, it's gonna be Penix. Like, we're not even, there's no question. So I think the worst case scenario would have been going into this year with like question marks everywhere. Like, we don't know if Penix is good enough. We don't know if Kirk is healthy or not. Like, now it's like, oh, we knew Kirk wasn't healthy and we know Penix is the future. So there you go. As much as you can know after that few games, but it was certainly a riveting start to Penix's career. But yeah, the Falcons are going to get dragged through the mud for this, and it is what it is. But I'm done dragging them for it. It's like, we've done enough. We know it was a terrible situation that they didn't exactly handle well, but we got Penix. And again, like we said when Penix was drafted, as long as you get your franchise quarterback in place, no one's really going to care about the road to get there, whether you had to trade picks or spend a lot of money or whatever. If that franchise quarterback's in place, that's a checkbox for being a contender that if you don't have it, you're never going to be able to do it. So one way or another, the Falcons seemingly have acquired someone who could be their franchise quarterback at Michael Penix. And the good news is that the Kirk contract, it's only the maximum it's going to do is be on the books for one more year. And next year it will be on the book for almost nothing. If they can't trade him this year and get him completely off the books, there will be a small amount next year, but they'll still save a lot of money. So at least this wasn't like a contract that's going to be lingering for like 2-3 years into Penix's rookie deal, where we're still not being able to take advantage of the rookie contract. The way it stands now, it seems like first year obviously not, second year not, but maybe third year, the last 3 years of Penix's rookie contract, including that 5th year option, it's like maybe then you can get some kind of savings, which it's not nothing. It's not 5 years, but it's not nothing.
No.
So yeah. Anything about Kyle Pitts? The team seems committed to keeping him around. I don't think there's anything meaningful in that statement, because I think they would say that no matter what. But
yeah, that's just nothing on Pitts for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on from those conferences, or I think the Kirk thing was the major thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think from here, now it's just more about, seeing what they do in free agency and everything like that. And just kind of really interested to, look at this approach, because like we're, about to talk about with all these prospects, and then some of the decisions the team has already seemingly made could lead us to some answers about some potential free agents as well.
Yeah. I think, well, it's funny because like everybody like fan wise watching the combine is like watching for the prospects, but like this is where like the trades and like the free agency like rumor mill like really gets going, because all these NFL officials get together, all these team GMs and scouts and everybody are all there, and they're all gossiping and doing whatever. So this is actually kind of where the free agency period gets fired up too. So there's a lot we're going to hear over the next couple days, and it seems like there's already been controversy, with the Ian Rappaport Jordan Schultz battle in the Starbucks. Thankfully, we were safe. We were not there to witness this great battle. But yeah, it's going to be combine legend for the foreseeable future, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm you always love hearing about the beef. Typically, you expect it to be some player beef, maybe some coaching beef or anything like that. But the air of Starbucks going at it with one of the NFL's best. This is why this game is the best, because there's action happening at all times.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. It's rare that you get the insiders beef. But hey, we take what we can get in terms of news snippets here. So, moving on to like, the combine in general. I know there's a couple. We might want to start with this, and there's a couple prospects that, and this happens like every time we get to the combine. Stuff starts coming out about prospects, whether it's skeletons in the closet, whether it's character concerns, whether it's coaching concerns, that sort of thing. Obviously, Mike Green, has the past like sexual abuse, assault allegations from now many years ago, but back when he was with Virginia, that led to him transferring out of the Virginia program. And the Falcons have a history of steering clear of guys with that in their past, except for Deshaun Watson, notably. We should not forget to mention that. But that does seem to be the exception. But yeah, and to be clear, NFL teams know about this stuff well before the combine. Like, it's the media and fans that typically tend to learn these things at the combine. So all the stuff you've heard about teams being, high on guys or whatever, that doesn't change with this, because teams have already known about this stuff. But what's your sort of initial take on how to treat, players that have these concerns? And it can be hard to know what's legitimate and what's not.
Yeah. Yeah. It is very interesting when you kind of look at some of these edge prospects that, people might be concerned with what is on their resume in terms of off the field, or just, somewhat non-football related. And we've seen the stuff with James Pierce kind of, supposedly being tough to work with, maybe not the most coachable guy, maybe a little bit of a hothead. We've seen Princely, he went viral this past year for, wanting to get into it with fans after losing. And then now you have, the Mike Green situation, which dates back to Virginia Tech and then high school. There's no charges there or anything. That's something that really matters for the team's sake. I'm not saying that means anything in reality, because these situations, they often are never really taken care of the right way. So I think Atlanta's going to look at these, and I think teams in general are going to kind of evaluate, and put these guys into buckets, and what is a legitimate personality issue that will cause conflict, within a locker room, within a team, versus what is misplaced passion, what is, a bad decision from a young man. And I think when you look at somebody like Princely is like the one I would be the least worried about. If fans are like, oh, well, the whole, I'm like, that to me is like misguided passion or misplaced passion and emotion. That's a young man that's upset he lost a football game. It's hard to put yourself in these guys' shoes, and it's very easy to say they should be composed. But if you've got, 40,000 plus fans, talking at you, it is a part of the game, but it's also very easy to see how, yeah, a kid's going to be upset, and he's going to want you to come say that to his face because he knows that you're hiding behind that barrier. The James Pierce stuff, that's where it gets a little dicey, because that kind of relates more to like coaching and relationship. And you know what? Not every coach and player personality matches up. And so that's going to be on the team to evaluate, like, is James Pierce really the problem? Because like whenever you hear about these things, it's always like, oh, this player is the issue. But I can tell you firsthand that there's a lot of bad coaches out there. There's a lot of coaches who are bad people. Players are not perfect. Coaches aren't perfect. So sometimes personalities just don't line up, and it can create problems. The one thing we know about James Pierce is that it never affected his play on the field in terms of production. You saw that he was able to overcome those relationships and be able to produce, which that's kind of a plus for him. Like, were you a uber talented guy who didn't produce and had fights with coaches, or were you uber talented guy who did produce but then just had issues with personalities behind closed doors? Again, that doesn't scream to me as a situation where the Falcons are like, we're immediately out because we heard that. That's like where the due diligence part comes in. And back to Mike Green, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to take them calling people from his hometown. It's going to take them calling his high school head coach. It's going to take them doing work at Virginia Tech. If they like him enough, if they want him bad enough, they'll do those things. And if they come to the conclusion that it's fine, then hey, that's the conclusion they came to. If they didn't, it's easy to get upset, but maybe this is the first year where you can kind of feel good if they passed on Mike Green and they took Pierce or Princely or somebody else, because there are so many options that, you really shouldn't put yourself in the hole, making yourself feel like if we don't take Mike Green, we have no other options, because that's not reality. So I think they're going to be able to navigate this well. And like historically, the Atlanta Falcons historically manage personalities, manage guys that have had like issues off the field. It hasn't necessarily gone that way with Terry's time here, but that doesn't mean that Blank isn't open to it. Other people in the building aren't open to it. Raheem has worked with guys before who come from like have backgrounds where they're maybe, not, high mark character guys, but he's able to connect with them. He feels good about it. Same with Jeff Ulbrich. So, we have a staff that I think is, really focused on the personality aspect of making sure that these guys are, going to fit what they want culturally. And so, I think that, at the end of the day, they're going to find a guy that's comfortable, and it could be one of those three. I don't think anybody should just immediately assume that all three of those guys are off their board.
Yeah. And with this stuff, I mean, ranging the whole gamut from just the personality issues to like, serious allegations, like us as maybe mid-level media members, like, for being generous to ourselves, we're never going to get the level of detail needed to be able to vet this stuff on any sort of, like, maybe like a player like, as an example, not saying there's anything going on with this player, but saying like Azaria Thomas, if there's something I wanted to check out with Azaria Thomas, I know his high school coach. I've chatted with him. My brother played with him for like 4 years, So like I could maybe actually have a way to get some vetting of that particular player, but like neither one of us have the connections to be able to go vet someone from Marshall like Mike Green or Virginia or whatever. So like it's kind of hard to weigh in on these concerns at any level above just the purely like base level, because we'll never have the information necessary to be able to give you a straight answer that's meaningful. So it's really up to the team, and that's kind of where we have to leave it. I wish I could provide more salient analysis on that, but it's just like, no, it's up to these teams that actually have the resources to investigate to get these answers. We really can't, and because of that, we just kind of have to throw our hands up and say, well, the team will either vet him and think it's fine, or they won't draft him, and that's kind of the way it goes. And we probably won't really know unless we get a little nug somewhere, if they actually had someone off their board, or if they just had them lower, or if they just got drafted before the team wanted to draft them. So it's kind of it's these are the trickiest things for us, and I think most draft analysts that aren't working like directly with the league. These are the things that are the hardest to factor in, because we just don't know how serious these things are, and how much they matter to NFL teams. So we'll just have to see how it goes. But I also wouldn't assume that any of those three guys are off the Falcons board. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But, speaking of, it sounds like Green's not going to work out. I know he's someone that a lot of people wanted to see what the testing was. Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, both not going to work out, which is really sad because, man, I really wanted to see Kenneth Grant run sub-5. Now I know he's going to run sub-5.
Get you at the pro day.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's going to run sub-5 at the pro day, but
Yeah, and I'm interested in your opinion on this, Kevin. How do you feel about seeing this? And in my, it really started at the All-Star events, but how are you feeling? I think it's really the second year in a row now where we're starting to see like more guys are opting out. Is that like, I know it can at times make things harder for us, but do you really think it does, like missing out on those events, or do you think it just what it really does, do you think it just forces you to be more narrow with your scouting, because now you basically go by pro day to look for the guys that are your guys beforehand, or just kind of what's your take in general on all this?
Yeah, I feel like the NFL has been pushing it with the combine. Like they do, like it's well known. Like they kind of like low key tortured the athletes. Like they, not like medieval style. Just like they make you get up at like 4 a.m. They put you in meetings all day, and like a lot of times you don't get to work out until the end of the day when you have to go through all this stuff, and it's like a psychological test for them. And like I get it from an evaluation standpoint, but also like this is the NFL. This is like professional level stuff. We should stop treating them like, come on, like you got to have more respect for the players than that. So I feel like if they maybe backed off of some of that and like treated them a bit better, gave them more time to prepare, and didn't stuff as much into their schedules, then more players would be working out at the combine. I feel like for these top guys, they're like, it's not worth it for us to risk having an off day and hurt our stock, because we're being put through the ringer, like psychologically. We'll just do it at our pro day. Obviously the second, third round and beyond guys are pretty much always going to work out. And so that's going to mean most of them are, but if they really want the top guys to perform at the combine, I think they have to start backing off a little bit on that. And I think, will they do it? I don't know. But I think that's one thing they could do to entice, like throw them a bone. Like if you want them to work out, just don't like make their workout day light or something, make it easier for them, make it less stressful. But will they want to do that, or will they want to continue on with the old school way of doing things? That's an open question, but I do think it's a shame that like they want to make this a televised event. They want this to be a big thing that fans watch. And the best way to do that is to get the big names to work out, the guys that everybody wants to see. And if they're opting out, you're losing that. So you're losing money,
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think, and like a lot of people need to realize, it's like, oh, they have to wake up early for the chance to get $1 million. But like a majority or not majority, but the combine invites like however many players. I think half of them don't get drafted. Like it's like it is a lot of work for some guy who maybe doesn't have like a agent team that is footing the bill for him at every turn. A lot of these guys don't get the perks that the like top 30, top 20 prospects coming into a draft class get. And so you're seeing the guys who are at the top not even want to really do this anymore, because what is the benefit? We've seen guys get injured here. There's no combine insurance policy. The NFL doesn't pay you out if you get injured at their combine event. So there's a lot of risk for these players. And I think what it's really just going to do is just kind of force us to maybe do a little bit more work earlier to figure out the guys we like. So we pay more attention to pro days and everything like that. But it's an interesting trend, and one that I kind of agree with you. I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. I think we're just going to kind of have to figure out how to evolve in this new normal when it comes to the combine.
Yeah. So we'll just have to see how the NFL adapts, because I think the players, especially the top players, you know, they feel like they don't need to do this. Like, they're already top first round prospects. Why risk injury? Why risk lowering their stock when their stock is almost as high as it can get? Like, what are they trying to do? Get from 20 to the top 10? I mean, and how many guys like I know guys want to go high, but like, how many guys would really much rather like lift their stock into like the top 10 to go to those teams versus like the 20s? Like, if I was in the 20s, I'd probably be like, I'm good with this. If I'm good with going to one of these teams in the 20s, I don't necessarily need to go number one, and deal with that. But it's going to be fascinating to see if the NFL kind of pivots or tries to do more to entice guys. Or like you said, I mean, like financial stuff, like supplemental insurance policies. Like, the top guys already have loss of value policies, but most of the guys at the combine aren't the top guys. So they may not have that type of stuff that they might, so again, it's like you got to entice these guys. You got to make it worth their while and make it worth the risk too. And for the top guys, you can't necessarily entice them with like, oh, well, you could improve your stock, because it's like, well, how much more can I improve my stock? Like, this is like, seriously. So, like Abdul Carter, what is he going to do? Improve from 2 to 1? I mean, like, how much does that really matter? So,
yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of felt like player empowerment's been a really big focus from players, and I think the younger generation of players is really like wanting to take control of that. And like, now you have kids who are already coming off getting paid, so like the whole waving of like potential dollar signs doesn't really hold the same weight to some of these kids who have already gotten real money.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's move on to the prospects themselves. Saw a lot of these guys at the Senior Bowl. But a lot of guys, pulled out of the Senior Bowl that were going to be there. One of them being Kenneth Grant. Come on. I can't, the gods won't let me see Kenneth Grant. I just don't know what to do about that. But, yeah, I mean, stuff's like, I mean, as we speak, probably in the next, half an hour or so, we're going to see the first on-field workout start. We'll record this on Thursday. Who are some guys? I mean, the Falcons apparently are only looking at defensive players. So it's just the next 2 days. But who are some guys you're really interested to see? Doesn't have to be like necessarily the guys that are going to be the best testers or the worst or whatever, but the ones that you really want to see perform here at the combine.
Yeah, so Carson Schleichinger from UCLA, that's probably the first one. He's already checked in 20 pounds heavier than his listed playing weight. And so this is like all part of gaming the combine. He skipped out on the Senior Bowl. He was somebody that we really wanted to see there. And now we know why. He's been training. He's been in the lab, and he's been putting on as much weight as he can. When things like that happen, I do get concerned, because 20 is one thing to gain 5 pounds, even 10 pounds, but 20 pounds, how do you move now? Like, he was one of the guys that I thought was probably the most fluid in coverage. He had the best hips out of all the linebackers in his drops, I think. And so my mind immediately goes to like, okay, now I really need to see your lateral testing, your explosive testing at this weight, because if you think this is achievable, then, hey, like you might be linebacker 1 if he moves the same way he did at the new weight, because now we're talking about a guy who's basically an inch off of Jihad Campbell. And that's the biggest difference between the two. So I'm like, okay. But I'm a little worried whenever I see massive weight jumps like that. And people know him as Chris Paul Jr. I'm seeing it's also being reported as Pooh Paul, Pooh.
Wow.
Paul. That's what.
All right, he's rocketing up my board as
Pooh Paul. He's somebody I wanted to see because he's an undersized guy. His I think measurables are going to be heavily scrutinized. Is he going to be a legit 6 foot? How do the arms look? How does the weight look? Those are going to be big measurables for him coming in at that linebacker position. And then trying to think, Colin Oliver from Oklahoma State. I'll give my guy a shout out. He's an interesting one to watch because he was a hybrid player in college. He played on the edge. He played outside and inside linebacker as well. He's somebody I think is going to be an off-ball guy. He had double-digit sacks as a freshman. I don't know if he's going to have the arms to be able to be as a versatile piece at the next level. So he's somebody where I'm like, are you going to actually be that guy, or are you going to just be off-ball strictly? So anybody on your end that you're looking? Oh, the other one was David Walker from Arkansas, the edge, or from Central Arkansas. Really interested to see how small is he. He's somebody where I'm like, I almost don't care. Like, I know he might not even be a true 6 foot, but I'm like, the tape is so ridiculous that it just feels like you could take a double dip shot on him on day 2 or something like that.
Yeah. No, I think David Walker's a great one. I think looks like he came in like 6'1", 263 or something like that. That's what he's listed at right now. I don't know if that's official or if that's just they pulled from something else, but usually when you see like the like non-5 numbers, like 260 or 265, you actually see 263. It's like, okay, somebody actually got that number from somewhere. But yeah, short arms though. David Walker looks like 31 7/8. So it's tough for an edge rusher, but again,
almost 32. If he had legit 32, I think people would be like, okay, hold on
a second. Yeah, no,
that one.
Yeah, no. I know Shamar Stewart. Everyone's getting hyped about Shamar. He measured in, crazy. 6'5", 260. I know you mentioned he lost like 15 pounds from the Senior Bowl, 20 pounds.
There's some big discrepancies from Senior Bowl measurements going on right now that a lot of people are questioning.
Yeah,
how accurate they were this year.
Right. So 34-inch arms. I mean, crazy. I know people are like, oh, well, if he tests super well, then maybe we're having Trayvon Walker conversations or something. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be really interesting. I know like Donovan Ezeraku, someone that everyone wants to see the testing on. Another guy you mentioned before the show, Nick Scourton, he dropped a lot of weight, which is good. Came at 257. I think 260, 265 is actually where he should be. And 33-inch arms, 6'3", 10-inch hands, all checks out. He's someone that I think could really, like, he was a top 10 guy like most of the college season. This year the production kind of fell off, and he was also playing at 280 something, which is like ridiculous for him. But I think like if he tests super well here at the combine, people are going to remember the 2023 tape and be like, okay, well maybe he is like a top 20 player. Like maybe he is. Maybe we overthought that. So I would keep an eye on Nick Scourton, Falcons fans, as like if Mike Green goes early or the team's out on him for whatever reason, and you see Carter and Michael Williams and whatever, like Scourton could be the next guy on the board. Him and James Pierce probably in that range, so he's definitely one to look at.
That's a good one, Scourton. He's so fascinating because it's a tale of two tapes. You watch that Purdue tape and it's like whew, and you look at that A&M tape and it's whew for the opposite reason.
Yeah, it's big difference, right? And I'm really interested to see how much teams weigh this year's tape when he was clearly playing too heavy, I think. And how much do they hold that against him? But if they hold it against him enough for him to fall to Atlanta, maybe it's okay. But we'll see. But yeah, I mean Kenneth Grant, I think was going to be one of the most like coveted people to watch. Like, but he's unfortunately not going to work out, so that's sad. I know like Cam Jackson from Florida weighed in really well. Like he's like
I'm really I'm like he stuck out to us at the Senior Bowl, and like since then I have like really been high on this guy being like, man, this looks like your one tech. This looks like your big body that you need. He's got juice. I like Caldwell out of Oregon as well. He's another guy where I'm just like, I think he's been getting overshadowed by Harmon, which is fine, but I think he's being slept on a little bit as a prospect too.
Yeah, yeah, and JJ Pegues from
Yes, from
Mississippi.
Ole Miss.
He's gonna be working out as a fullback as well, which is just awesome. So just shout out to JJ Pegues. But this is like one of the deepest like nose tackle classes I can remember. Like there's just so many good
Oh,
nose tackles.
did you see the Jalen Walker measurements?
No, but is it spicy?
It is spicy. So
All right.
one, he is not 6'2". He is a flat 6'1". He is 243, which is solid.
Yeah.
32-inch arms. So he's that be in the 5th percentile of edges. That is low.
Yeah.
Big hands though, 10 and 1/4 of an inch hands. He's built like an off-ball linebacker, which concerns me because he barely played a real. He's now just become even more scary to me. He has this super character. He's just this weird build now. Like he's not even like crazy marks within the off-ball linebacker range. Is kind of just average. So he's a guy who's like measurements now. He's gonna have to let his testing numbers do the problem. Like he's gonna have to let that talk, because it's been a lot of like, well, at this size and at these explosiveness. Well, now the size is gone. He's basically built like he's basically built like Pooh Paul with slightly longer arms and more weight. So it's like
He's like smaller Arnold Ebiketie. Like Ebiketie was 6'1", but he had longer arms. I think he had like 33 and something inch arms and was like heavier too. But Jalen Walker does have big hands. You might have thought that was a man with small hands. You'd be wrong. So, yeah, that is an interesting one. And you got, I mean, I've tweeted about it. Like, he just scares me too much to take him at 15. I just don't. I just got that feeling. I'm like, I don't really want to get involved with this. Not to say that he can't be a very good player, and I think his potential as an edge rusher, like Nolan Smith, is basically what he's praying he becomes. Like, and Nolan Smith was a tiny edge rusher too. So, Nolan Smith had some success, but like based on like, I think Nolan Smith's had like appropriate success for where he was drafted. Where Jalen Walker's getting like top 10 hype right now. So I don't really know what to do with that.
If he doesn't test well, I think now we're on the edge of like his stock could fall after today, because he's checking in an inch shorter. If the explosives don't match up and the speed and everything isn't there, then he's somebody who's, I think a lot of people had him marked as a guy like, oh, he's going to leave with more hype. Now he's on the other end of that coin, and it could easily be he's now going to fall. And maybe that very first mock from Trey and Kevin isn't so crazy after all, with Jalen Walker falling. Maybe
we totally didn't just forget that he was on the board under linebacker. Totally didn't forget about that at all. And that he was ranked very low. But maybe that means we're just that smart. Or maybe we should have now on publicly seen on NFL Network, Trevor Sikkema talking to Rap Sheet. His draft board maybe was just correct, and we followed that to the letter. So,
just saying, hey, just say they're going against the grain. What helps sometimes. So we have had issues trying to see it, and now the plot thickens because he's not an edge. Like I feel pretty comfortable saying at this point, like I don't see him being able to survive full time on the edge. And it's like, oh, you're saying that because of combine measurements? No, because Georgia didn't even believe he should be playing edge full time. So if that was already the role he was in there, I don't see him becoming like, he wasn't Travis Hunter killing it at two positions. He was just a decent athlete playing two different spots. So I don't know. Not trying to get too far to the Walker weeds. But
no, it's just like it's like if he's gonna play off ball, like why would I not want Jihad Campbell? Like if I'm looking for an off ball linebacker that can rush the passer, why wouldn't I just draft Jihad Campbell? Like he's a much better off ball linebacker. Much better off ball linebacker. So it's like why would am I like Jihad Campbell's got way better size. He also looks like a good athlete. So like I don't know. Like I don't know. He's got bigger hands too, 10.5. Oh my God, these guys have huge hands. But yeah, it's a weird spot for him to be. Certainly. Maybe I don't know. Maybe we should check on. Is there any DBs that you're looking for? I mean,
So Isaiah Thomas, who you already mentioned earlier out of Florida State, he's somebody I'm really interested in. Elijah Huzzy, I feel like I'm on the Huzzy bus solo right now. After seeing him in Shrine, he just seems like such a secondary player for us because he's got the age, he's got the long start history. They're gonna love the floor. I want to see how he tests. He's an older guy. I think he's going to be. I think he might be older than Penix already, which is old. If you ask anybody who covered Penix
old
last year,
man
who drafted the Brandon Whedon of the NFL draft, apparently. And Will Johnson, I'm interested to see like what does that 40 time look like. He was one of the bets that I saw yesterday where it was something between like 4.38, 4.40, which I thought was interesting because I've heard his long speed is the downfall. So after he hits the 20-yard mark, I think is when it's really going to be like, what is, that final stretch there? Is he able to actually pull it all together, or is he going to be in that mid 4.4 range? So, yeah, he's one that I'm excited to see because a lot of people seem to think he's going to fall. And then Janae Barron, who was like being talked about crazy, I feel like his PR is like settled down so much. So he's another person where DB wise, just kind of want to see what we got, and if it's going to be, if it's going to look good, if it's going to look like a 15 pick, or if it's going to look like, you trade down, maybe hope you get it later.
Yeah. I'm really curious. I think like Will Johnson in particular is like one of the biggest variance guys. Like I think if he does like test, because I think the question seemed to be like, oh, is he gonna run poorly? Does he not have long speed? So if he like runs like a 4.4 or something like that, then I think he'll be a top 10 pick again, no question. But we'll just see how that goes. But Azaria Thomas too, I think his testing will go a long way. Everyone Siobhan Ravel's not working out, I don't think, because he's not recovered yet. But I know everyone would want to see what he looks like, because if he had played all year, he might be in the conversation as one of the top corners in this class. Darian Porter said he wants to run the fastest 40 of anyone at the combine. He does strike me as I can't ever remember this guy's name. The guy that went to the Seahawks, who had that like crazy combine, the corner that went to the Seahawks. He was also like a little bit, wasn't super hyped either, but like tested like absolutely crazy. Yeah, Tariq Woolen. Oh, that's funny. That's his comp from Lance Sterling. I was like, okay, yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
So Tariq, so he could be Tariq Woolen basically this year, where it's like he's more of like a day 2 guy, and then he's basically like a late first guy after the combine. Because of that just crazy athleticism. And then, I mean, everybody wants to know how athletic Malachi Starks is. The Falcons are meeting with him, I guess, on Friday, which is not surprising at all. But I know, like, Nick Emanwari is someone that people are really excited to see. So
he has the juice.
Yep. The juice is loose at the combine here in about, I guess it should be starting any minute now. But yeah, so any of those DB like safeties or anything that you're looking at too?
Yeah, Emanwari is definitely one of them. I think that's like, and I said Barron, but yeah, I think Nick's the one that's the most intriguing. I really like what he offers. I don't necessarily believe he's going to be a true third level defender for you. I think he's going to like operate like best within the box, almost this hybrid linebacker safety position. And so I'm really focused on his explosives, trying to see what he's going to be able to offer there, change of direction, some of those things. He does just kind of get a little bit sloppy with, but he's very young. He's 20 years old. So he's a guy where, I put him in a list for the Falcoholic as like prospects that would break trends for Atlanta. And he's one of them because he would be, he'd be the youngest guy in the room by a landslide. He would not match the resume of guys we've drafted previously, like Richie Grant or Clark Phillips, who are older, long-term college starters, very high floor players. You feel like you know what you're getting, whereas he's more of a ball of clay. And we usually take our balls of clay and put them, or we usually draft balls of clay on the D line. And we have taken Troy as another one, but like Jerry Gray seems to really prefer veterans or prefer more, I think, established guys. So he's somebody where I'm like, could he entice the team enough? Could Terry, really say, hey, like, I think this is a guy we need to make work because he solves multiple problems, similar to Malachi Stark, similar to Jahdae Barron. Who are the players in the draft that I think can do more than one thing? Because the one note from Terry's pressers this week that did stick out was him just talking about the amount of players he felt like offered versatility in this draft. And so if he's thinking versatility, I'm looking at who are some of the most versatile prospects. And so like the Jahad Campbells, the Barons, these guys who can do a lot for you and never come off the field come to mind.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, I do think like, we'll obviously see what their plan is at slot. And whether that's drafting someone, signing someone, re-signing someone. They have some options. But if they don't, fill that need in free agency, then this is certainly a class that has a lot of slot, but not just slot corners, but like slot players. Like,
yeah,
Malachi Starks is a great example. Andrew Makuba from Texas has played the slot some. There's guys here that could give you some work at safety, but could also be like a big nickel starter for you. Getting more into that Brian Branch sort of mold. That's kind of what you're hoping Malachi Starks could be.
Yeah. And we haven't even talked about like the inside out corners. Like who are the guys that can play inside corner and actually play out? Like I know, like Kobe Bryant, or even like Jabbar Muhammad. Like these guys who give you legit reps. Because CB2 is still up in the air. Like we've like talked about the safety going on, but like Mike Hughes is in 4 other defensive backs right now. Are said to be free agents.
Yeah, so we'll have to see who they decide to bring back and what they decide to do there. But yeah, another guy I didn't mention that I kind of got on the other day was Jacob Parrish from Kansas State as a potential slot guy. I know like Trevor Sikkema was really high on him, but he definitely looks interesting. I'm be watching his testing closely too, because there's some guys like this. Sometimes with slot, you can get someone like early on day 3. It's less common now to get great slot corners later because teams just have realized that it's important. But sometimes those slot guys will fall a little bit more. So you can maybe that is one you could get with that 4th round pick. But obviously, the Falcons getting a 3rd round pick or something along those lines would help a lot because
a long way.
They really need that extra top 100 pick. I think it's like almost critical. Obviously they also have to hit on that pick, but if they want this defense to like take major strides, they probably have to find a starter in free agency. They probably can't afford to lose Mike Hughes. They probably have to draft an edge, a nose tackle, a slot corner, and a safety. Like, so it's like you got to fill some of those needs somewhere. And you can't, those 2 7s aren't really going to help you that much in that regard. So, getting some extra picks or creating some cap space to do things in free agency, that kind of seems like something they got to do if they want to seriously turn this defense around in this offseason, which can it happen? Yes. Is it likely to happen? Probably not. But they don't have to fix it entirely though. Like if they could just take a step in the right direction, that would go a long way to helping this team be competitive. So,
yeah, I agree, and I think that, gosh, it's so funny. I feel like every time we kind of really get into the thick of all this, you just see all these avenues that the team can go down. But the best one is getting that day 3, is getting that extra day 2 pick. That's the best route.
Yeah.
Like that, and what I hope they come away with by sending, we haven't really got into it, but by sending only defensive staff here, what I'm hoping is that they're basically just looking at like, oh yeah, we can trade down to 20 and definitely find a guy we're going to be happy with. We can trade down to wherever we can make these moves, because that just kind of feels like, the to me, that feels like one of the biggest reasons why you would be so, defensive minded focus is not necessarily sending all those people to decide if you can pick one player, but sending all those people to say, yeah, we'd be happy with these 5 guys like in round 1. So like if we're at 15 and we still have like 4 or 5 of our guys on the board, then yeah, we totally feel good about trading down. I don't think it's sending this massive fleet to all look at one guy because that would be terrible scouting. That would be like the antithesis of scouting. You're not scouting at all at that point.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think, about getting eyes on as many guys as possible because they're probably going to have to move around. Unless they find a great offer for Kyle Pitts or something like that, which, I guess we'll see if that's even a route they want to take. The only way to get more picks is going to be to trade down. And I don't know how easy it's going to be to trade down in this draft. It seems kind of like teams are, feeling like this isn't super strong at the top, so they want more picks. So it's not going to be easy to trade down when, everybody wants more picks. But
I think it's going to come down to what offensive players on the board when we pick, because there are not a lot of premium offensive assets in this round 1. So I think hope, not for a massive edge, going or anything like that, or a bunch of edges coming off the board, but I think if we see kind of this draft play out, initially how we've expected, that there could be some good offensive talent that teams might want. But like you said, it's a draft where everybody's going to want to try to do that. So
yeah,
you gotta hope you're in a good spot.
Right. I mean, it'll be interesting. Like, I think if like G&T falls, that could obviously be one that teams start getting really tempted by. Tet McMillan or Luther Burden or whatever. Emeka Egbuka, even like once you start getting past those guys, it does start to thin out, like in terms of the first round caliber receivers. There's a lot of wide receiver needs in the 20s. Tackle, like offensive tackle. If those guys fall at all, that could be potentially a ticket to trade down. So I'm interested to see what ends up playing out, but that is going to be a fascinating one to see how the Falcons navigate the first round, and what let's hope that all these defensive coaches go into the combine can at least net us a couple starters here. But long way to go before we get there. But yeah, Tre'Shon, I think we covered it pretty well. Anything else you want to get to before we sign off this belated Tuesday takes?
Yeah, just take in as much information as you can, but just know that like the purpose of these events and everything is to match measurements, measurables with film. And so like, I don't think, or I don't, I hope that there isn't, one single measurement that would prevent the team from doing something, because, even a guy like I'll call out Chris Paul Jr., like checking in with sub 30-inch arms, you don't like to see that. And so like when you get that information, you don't just say, oh, well, now he can't play. Go back, you look at his film, the arm length issues show up. And so, does he have issues engaging and disengaging from blocks? Does he have issues in coverage with like the length limiting his ability to defend the ball and stuff like that? And so like, that's what you do when you get this information. I know that's what we're going to do when we get it. So don't necessarily panic about all of the measurements if a guy you really liked didn't hit those marks that you were expecting, because we do see guys every single year with non-traditional measurements still go into the league and produce, and that's because at the end of the day these are the freakiest athletes in the world. And so they're all still really good football players, and we do need to remember that.
Yeah, and like again, it's like even if these guys like go on to have very mediocre NFL careers, or they test poorly or whatever, like we're comparing these guys to like NFL players. Yeah. So these are still like some of the best people in the entire world at playing football, and some of the best athletes in the world, like regardless of their testing here or like, how they actually pan out in the NFL. Put some respect on their names, because these guys to make it this far is quite an achievement. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you for hanging out with us here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. We are going to be working to set up a time to record with Falcon slot cornerback D. Alford. Appreciate D for reaching out. So we'll figure out when we can get that going. So stay tuned for more intel on that conversation. And yeah, we'll be back next week with more combine coverage, and then we'll start getting geared up for free agency. So until then, guys, please like, subscribe. Really appreciate that. Helps us out. If you got comments, let us know who you want to see at the combine this weekend. Appreciate that. If you want to support the show, you can go check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live, or join up with the YouTube channel memberships. Also want to thank, of course, Tre'Shon Diaz. He's at Trey3Sean at Tre'Shon.io on the Blue Skies. Anything else you're working on, Tre'Shon, you want to let the people know about?
Nope, we're in the full draft grind, Kevin and I. So we will be watching prospects, looking up all the good stuff for you guys, and hopefully continuing to give you guys what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, I'm Kevin Knight of Falcoholic Kevin. Make sure to check out thefalcoholic.com for that great written content. Thanks to BetOnline and to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring today's episode. Until then, guys, we'll see you next time on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Have a great day, folks.